Let me show you the secrets to dividing dahlia tubers like a pro. First, let's go over some of the best tools for dividing dahlia tubers. First and most importantly, a pair of fine tip pruning shears. You're going to want to get some commercial grade ones. We've tried just about all of them from big box stores, and they just don't work well when dividing tubers. Some people like using one of these pruning knives, and some people like using a huge knife to split up big and difficult tuber clumps. And a game changer for dividing tubers is a cordless multi-tool. This works great for cutting off woody stems, and it can also be used to cut big tuber clumps right in half to make them easier to divide. And mix up a 10% bleach solution for sanitizing your tools between clumps. Studies show that a 2-minute soak in a 10% bleach solution will kill most plant viruses and diseases. Before we begin dividing our tubers, you need to understand the different parts of a dahlia tuber. This bulky bottom section is what we would call the body. This thinner section is what we call the neck. Anything up top around here, near the eyes and near the base of this stem, these are what we refer to as the crown. Crowns are where you're going to find the eyes. Every tuber needs an eye to grow the following season. Finding the eyes takes a little bit of practice. Sometimes the eyes are clear as day, like these ones, and sometimes there's even a small shoot forming out of the eye. But sometimes all you'll see is a little tiny raised spot on the tuber crown. The best tip we can give for making the eyes easier to see is cut your dahlia foliage down 1 week before you dig your tubers. Doing this makes the plant send energy into new growth, therefore making the eyes pop. Let's start by dividing this really easy clump. We'll get to a trickier one a little bit later. So the first step to dividing dahlia tubers is just to look for eyes. This clump has a ton of good eyes. You can see here, these eyes are really easy to see, and there's some more back here that are really easy to see, and I have plenty of room to get my clippers in, so this one's gonna be easy to divide. So the first thing I'm gonna do is just look for the easiest tuber to cut off. So this looks like the easiest one to cut, and I have plenty of room to get my snips in. So I'm just gonna come in here, snip this off, snip from the other side too, and just like that, there's our first tuber. We have a good eye, unbroken neck, and a nice body. So as you remove tubers, you'll reveal more and more eyes. As you're going, you want to look for broken necks. These tubers aren't worth saving. So I'm going to come in here, snip this one out of my way. Oh, you can see I made a little mistake there, but that's okay, it happens. But since I cut this off, we might as well check it for eyes. And luckily, I have a really good eye here, so this tuber is just fine. So next, I have this big tuber here with a bunch of eyes, and I have plenty of room to get my snips in. So I'm just gonna come in here, make that cut, and sometimes they'll come off in clumps like this, but that's not a big deal. We can break this down even further. So you can see it naturally wants to break apart already, so I'm gonna snip it where it's trying to break. And then let's look for eyes. So luckily, I have a bunch of good eyes here. So these two just actually fell apart without me even having to cut anything. And this one doesn't have an eye, so I'm just gonna throw it out. This other half, on the other hand, I have great eyes, so I got another tuber out of that clump. Now I'm gonna look on the bottom. Here's another easy to get to tuber, and there's a nice eye there, so I can snip that one off. This here is what we call the mother tuber. This was the original tuber you planted the following year. Unless it's a rare variety, we don't keep these. So I'm just gonna cut this off and get rid of that one too. Now we're getting down to the end of it. I've got one here with a weak, broken neck. And then I've got some good tubers here. So I'm gonna try to snip the broken neck tuber out of my way. And now this tuber would actually be okay once it dried and stored because it has plenty of body left, but this tuber is better. This one's in perfect shape. So I'm just gonna sacrifice this tuber and make this eye connect to this tuber. So I'm gonna go behind it, cut both of these off at the same time, and then snip this other tuber right off. And then we have one tuber left, and it just so happens that it does have good eyes, so I'm gonna snip this one off. We actually ended up with more good tubers than we had waste for that batch. Sometimes dahlias are really easy to divide, and then sometimes they make you wanna do this. Now let's move on to something a bit more challenging. As you can see, this clump is pretty compact and a lot harder to get your snips in. So the first thing I would do here is just cut away any roots, just because they'll get in my way of dividing. So now that those roots are out of my way, I can start dividing these dahlia tubers. So just like the first clump, we're gonna look for our easiest eyes to find. I have some nice eyes here, but it's hard to get the snips in to get a clean cut. So what I'm gonna actually do here is just sacrifice some of these smaller ones until I can get my snips behind here. That's just part of dividing dahlias. Not every tuber is gonna be used. So I'll cut this little one off, and then this one has a bad neck anyway. So I'll cut this one off and out of my way. And now as you can see, I have a spot where I can get my snips behind here and separate these 3 dahlias from the tuber clump. And they come right off like that. Now from here, I need to decide how I want to split this clump up. I have enough eyes, I can definitely get at least 2 tubers out of it. So I'm gonna keep this eye and this eye to this tuber, and I'm gonna try to keep these 2 eyes to these 2 tubers. So you could try to further divide this, but leaving them together is no problem. So I'm just gonna leave them like this. So as you start breaking a clump down, you're just gonna keep revealing more and more eyes. So I revealed another good eye here and another good eye here. This one looks pretty easy to remove since I can get my clips right in there. So I'll cut that one off. And you could leave these together, but it's much easier to store just one of them. So I'll clip off the one with the weaker neck. And then here's one with a broken neck like we saw earlier. So I'll get that right out of my way. And then we have more good eyes attached to this tuber. So I'll snip that one off. And then you can see I damaged this neck. So I'll just get rid of that one and keep this one. Now you can see these eyes are attached to this tuber and also this cut one. So I'm gonna see if I can loosen those up by cutting right behind them. Okay, so here's a situation you might run into. I have these loosened, but you can see this tuber is tangled up in this clump. So you can either sacrifice one and cut it right off, or you can just try to cut your way into the clump. So I can see this tuber is blocking these. So I'm gonna come in here, snip this one out of my way. And now that was probably enough to get these loose. And now you can see this tuber's been cut off, but once it's dried and stored, this will grow a dahlia just fine next year. So I can get 2 good tubers out of this as well. As you can see, it gets kind of repetitive. As I reveal eyes, I'm just gonna keep cutting tubers off. So here's a good example of a tuber clump that can be divided entirely using the multi-tool. These tubers here have nice, bulky, thick neck and big tuber bodies. So these are durable, so you could actually divide this entire clump with your multi-tool. First, make sure to disinfect this between clumps, just like you would the clippers. And the first thing you can do is come right in here and cut the stem right off. Like butter. Now, like I said, these have nice sturdy necks, so I can actually use this tool to divide these dahlia tubers. So this has plenty of eyes and a nice bulky tuber. So I'm gonna come in here with my tool again and cut that one right off. I see this one has no eyes, so I'm just gonna trim it out of the way. Next, I'm seeing some eyes down in this crevice, so I'll just come from above, cut straight down, and there's another. Now I'll flip it over, and I'm seeing more eyes in here, so I'll take my oscillating tool again. Just come in like that, and like that. Now I damaged this tuber here, but we have good eyes here, so I'll just cut this one right off. Here's another good eye here. And that's gonna be it for this tuber clump. So as you can see, the multi-tool doesn't work for dividing every dahlia clump, but in some situations, it's a real time saver. It also can be a big help for people with hand issues or arthritis.